Good evening, members, and welcome. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Audit Committee, and I have to read out the emergency evacuation announcement. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm activates, please leave the building in an orderly fashion via the nearest fire exit. Use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage, so over there on my left. The fire assembly point's the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation or to collect belongings. Do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. And the meeting is being live streamed. And please switch off mobiles or turn them to silent. And please note the toilet and hand washing facilities are available in the foyer. There's no members of the public to warn about filming, so we haven't got to worry about that. Okay, and we can move on. Oh yes, we use microphones, as you know, and during the meeting, when I invite you to speak clearly into the microphone and tap the button to turn it off when you stop speaking, because that's something you have to do. Now, so agenda item 1 is apologies for absence, and we've had apologies from Councillor Judy Gooding and Councillor Arthur Williams. Okay, moving on. Any non-members attending? No. Any substitute members attending? No. Now, the next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of September 2023. Are those minutes agreed, members? Agreed. Yeah, thank you. And the next item of 5 is to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No? No. Right, well, item 6 is now the audit progress report number 2 of 2023-24 to consider the report of the audit and counter fraud manager providing an update of progress made against the annual audit plan of 2023-24 and action taken by service departments in implementing audit recommendations. And I believe I've got to hand over to Mike Porter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I can ask members to turn to page 6.6 of the agenda pack. So in terms of progress against the plan, we report here that a further 4 audit engagements have been completed and a further one is at the draft report stage. Since going to print, that is now 5 audits completed. That draft one's now turned into a final report. The draft report was in relation to economic growth, and that's now been finalised. So we've completed 5 audits. But for the purposes of tonight's meeting, we'll talk about the 4 completed audits. In terms of those 4 completed audits, we completed an audit of GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations, an audit of recruitment and retention, an audit on IT infrastructure. That was completed by our delivery partner, Elucidate. And we're undertaking a light touch review of build control. So that's a piece of consultancy work we undertook. In terms of assurance opinions, we provided an adequate opinion for GDPR, an adequate opinion for recruitment and retention, and a limited assurance rating for IT infrastructure. So I'd like to briefly talk about the ICT infrastructure audit as it received a limited assurance from ourselves. So if I can direct members to 6.17 of the agenda pack. Just give you a chance to flick to that page. So if we look at the key findings in relation to that piece of work. So what we identified, or Elucidate, our delivery partner, there was no long-term IT strategy in place, which links IT service development to longer-term objectives of the council and service area needs. There was no annual IT service plan to ensure linkage of IT activity to business and service objectives, and the ICT risk register is not up to date. So what this means is essentially there's no roadmap in terms of the future of ICT and how it links to the objectives of the council. But what we can report is that a project has been initiated to implement a joint ICT service. So basically plans are afoot. Because of this the one team approach now, we've got I suppose it's moving forward in terms of what ICT will look like across both councils going forward. So we've received quite good assurance from the IT manager in terms of where we will be in the future. So we're quite happy with that response. So if we're going to move now on to basically performance of service areas in implementing audit recommendations, provided Appendix 4. Sorry.
Sorry, are you moving away from the IT?
Yeah.
So could I ask,
Sorry.
sorry, through the chair, could I ask a few questions before we move away from that?
Certainly.
Sorry.
I wasn't sure how you want to deal with the questions
No,
at the
that's
end.
what I was wondering, if you want to advise how you'd like to deal with it, but.
I'll take questions now if you like.
Okay, on that particular area where we're talking about the data breaches, vulnerability to cyber attacks. I understand there's a plan, you're talking about a plan in the future, and you know that I accept that, and that's good. What my main concern is, what are we doing at the moment to keep the council safe from cyber attacks? Because I just read a document before I got here about what happened to Hackney Council and 12 million to try and get the IT services, you know, the data breaches resolved and get the information back. So what are we doing to make sure that this, best we can, doesn't happen to us?
Yeah, I mean, you can never be 100% safe against cyber attacks because the criminals are always one step ahead. So you're always playing catch up, and you don't have a crystal ball in terms of what's coming up next. But obviously we apply security patches to our network. So our network also has patches and updates to prevent. And also we do identify malware. So we have, like any computer, you have protection applied to the network or the system or laptop. So in terms, we can only be as sure as that we've applied security patches. We can only protect ourselves as much as we can do. I mean, you know, they're always one step ahead. So you can't 100% guard against that, but we ensure the systems are up to date as far as patches applied. And therefore we hope to protect, you know, our systems from any attempt by the council. And also the weakest link in anything in relation to cybersecurity is members of staff. That's the problem. The staff are the major problem. Is that you know you can get emails come through, and if people click on those emails, that puts the council at risk. So the biggest threat to any organisation is actually staff. The systems are in the main are protected, and they're quite, you know, they've got appropriate updates applied. So the systems are not weak; they're quite strong. So the weakest link in all this is staff, and what we're assured is that patches have been applied to the system at regular intervals.
So the long-term strategy is something you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, the long-term strategy is essentially a roadmap for the organisation in terms of where it wants to be in terms of ICT and what systems it wants in place and how that links to the longer-term objectives of the council. Because now you're in this one-team approach, it might be that some systems become redundant because you don't need two systems. You can operate one system across the board, and there might be some value for money exercises or efficiencies to be had from the one-team approach.
So I know this might sound silly, but I feel quite alarmed when it says there's no annual IT service plan, the risk register is not up to date. So really what I'm probably saying is, in view of all the key findings, the concerns, where are we with managing those to protect ourselves, not just patches on this? And do you see what my concern is that I understand that we're working towards something, but what we're doing to mitigate any issues at the moment, because that's not in plan. So are you saying that apart from patches and
I believe actually Emily Yule has got some information.
I'd just like a bit more reassurance about those key findings.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. Good evening, everyone. It's probably helpful for me to say something here because IT sits within my area of responsibility as strategic director. So first, councillors, I'll just direct you to risk 18 on the strategic risk register, which is actually in your packs for this evening as well. That gives quite a good summary, actually, of our acknowledgement of cyber attacks as a risk to the organisation, and then the mitigations that we take to tackle that. So whether that's system design, whether that's recovery methods, or whether that's staff training too, as my colleague alluded to, we know that one of the vulnerabilities for all organisations is things like phishing scams or rogue attachments on emails, that kind of thing. So we do regular exercises and training for our staff around that. So that gives you a summary that this is very much a live issue that we are managing on an ongoing basis, and that we've got a range of activities that we undertake to ensure that we do keep ahead of that. But, you know, it is a challenge, and it's a challenge to all public sector organisations and all private sector organisations, because, you know, there will always be very clever people out there that can do quite kind of scary things with technology that, you know, are always going to be ahead. But we do whatever we can to protect the council and to protect the council's data around that. And there are plans in place for IT. So there are service plans in place, and there are roadmaps in place for improvements, whether that's infrastructure improvements or software improvements. But I think probably they just haven't ticked the boxes that the audit was looking for. So what we just need to do is we just need to go back to those documents and make sure that they're fulfilling all the requirements to get that higher assurance level from the audit process.
Right, okay. Could I just ask you, the Council Public Service Network expired in May 22. What does that mean in terms?
Yeah, so I believe that was the kind of government secure network. So the PCSN network was a system that the government had to allow secure exchange of data files between local authorities and central government, and that's been replaced by a different system. Sorry for a not very technical answer there, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
So what do you actually run on the system? Do you run like a Norton or VPN or anything like that?
So we have a number of kind of antivirus products. We have firewalls. So there are various different layers of security that we use to protect our system. And again, I'm not a technical expert, so I'm not going to try and attempt to tell you what those are in any detail. But we have a number of different lines of defence against that. So we have products that we use, and then we have a really important part, which is the education and the training.
So do you get warnings come up if anything comes on? Yes.
Sorry, just really quick, what do you do about restoring and backup? How do we store that if we did have a cyber attack, we've got some separate cloud or something going on that we can get back the information, especially with ransom software and all that thing? How do we manage that?
Chair, if you're happy for me to respond to that. We do take regular backups of the council's data, and they are stored in the cloud. So that's a secure way of being able to kind of roll back to a point before the system was attacked as such. So we've got really strong recovery systems in place and business continuity arrangements in place for IT as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just, I'm going to refer to page 6.22 and 6.23, please. It talks about having a document which will state the ICT, I'm assuming long-term strategy, and talking about including how the ICT risks are going to be detailed in the risk register. The end date for that is the 30th of June. I'm assuming this is updating rather than creating a new document, is my first question. And secondly, can I ask Mike, please, through the chair, are you confident that this will be done by the end of June? Because that's quite a long time to pull a document together that really should already be in place.
I suppose I can't give the assurance that it'll be complete by 30th June. I mean, that's the date they gave us, so hopefully they are working towards that date. But I suppose in terms of assurance, that would come from the likes of the IT manager and Emily. So basically, when we agree these dates, that's a date they suggest they can make. So they wouldn't give a date they believe they can't make. So I would suggest the 30th of June is something they actually are working towards and can basically implement it by that date. because we do ask them to be honest in setting dates. Don't set a date that you can't achieve. So that we do have that robust conversation. So if they're suggesting 30th of June, then it's likely to be the 30th of June.
Okay, thank you.
Oh. I'm happy to, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to come back. So can I just ask Emily, I suppose, what document do we have in place that lays out our ICT strategy? Because I think that's quite important. Well, it's quite an important document, and assuming there is one, where would I find it, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think that's the crux of the recommendation, is that there isn't a singular document at this moment in time that sets out the strategy in one place. So there are probably, or I know there are different documents that describe different parts of the IT infrastructure or different parts of the software, but it's about pulling that together into a single strategy document. So just going back to your previous point, I don't think it is a case of starting from scratch. It's about pulling those things together into a single coherent document.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I've got a bit of a question. When anyone logs into our system through Outlook, obviously we have got the access to, and the councillors have been instructed how to use Authenticator, because that's quite an important thing. I know it can be a nuisance at times because it pops up and they won't let you in because you need a number from Authenticator, but it does stop someone outside having that option to get in, perhaps even to pose as a member of the council or an officer or whatever, if they happen to be lined up with that. The other thing, on a pre-meet, talking to Tim Willis, Elucidate were used to look at this entire problem because they're a specialist company. It's been taken very seriously by the council. That's why they've used Elucidate to do this exploratory research into this. And I understand that we are recruiting a joint service manager. Yeah, and this joint service manager will have the responsibility of this overarching maintenance of this plan so it runs smoothly. And that's been really taken very seriously by the administration, just to let you know that's what's going on. Thank you. So I've got Councillor Wilson is next.
Councillor Sharp.
Oh, Councillor Sharp, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just noticed that in respect of staff recruitment and retention, there is a limited assurance level assigned to the recruitment process. So I'd like to ask Mike how those shortfalls are being addressed. John.
I would have to go away and find out the findings behind that to understand that. Obviously, I didn't undertake the audit myself, but I can come back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the progress, there would be a number of recommendations assigned to that limited assurance rating. As you can see, there's one major and 5 moderate recommendations. So what I would be doing is looking at the recommendations applied to that, and then seeing what progress had been made. So it's understanding what the recommendations were sitting behind that, and then those recommendations are probably in Appendix 4. So you can ascertain from Appendix 4 what progress has been made in terms of addressing that assurance, that limited assurance rating. So I would direct you to Appendix 4 and the recommendations made there. But in terms of what progress is made, I can come back to you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Poulter. You don't wish to come back on? Okay. Next, it's Councillor Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Emily, my question really is, have we got sufficient resources to undertake this work to get the strategy and that in place?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just picking up the point that was made by the chairman about the joint corporate manager for IT. So that person is now in post. So that's one of the one team posts across Brentwood and Rochford. So a fundamental part of their role being new in post will be to look at those IT strategies across both councils, aligning where possible, keeping separate where it suits to keep them separate, but obviously using that efficiency of being able to share resources across the two councils and being able to kind of use that best practice across both councils to support each other's processes. So absolutely, the team is resourced to do that piece of work. And we're really seeing the benefits across the IT team, actually, of the strategic partnership between the two councils.
Are there any more questions? No? This report is actually for noting, is it? Yeah. Just to note the progress of the report. Do we take it as noted?
Yes, I take it as noted.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, it's now the risk management update. To consider report of the interim director resources to provide a revised insurance and risk management strategy and an updated risk register. Thank you, Emily York.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm presenting this report on behalf of Tim Willis, who's our Interim Director for Resources. So take no credit at all for the report, but happy to answer any questions. The insurance and risk management strategy has been revised after a periodic review, so it's reviewed on a regular basis, and that's here before you tonight, committee members, for approval. And then the second part of the report, and Appendix B, is the strategic risk register, which is updated on a quarterly basis, and you'll be used to that coming in front of you, and that's for you to note. As I said, Chair, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, members?
Yeah.
Councillor Sharp.
I think the risk register is comprehensive. The process looks very good. But I'd like to focus specifically on the insurance. Just wondering whether actually it's probably better to direct this to Tim, but if you can answer, I'll be very happy. It focuses on, this report focuses on the 4 policies that are affected, being property, motor, liability, which is referred to as casualty, and engineering and computer. I'm not actually sure what engineering and computer covers, but that's by the side. What I really want to focus on, though, is the contingent risk. And by that I mean the risk that RDC is sued by a claimant as a result of a contractor's negligence. So a good example of that would be, for example, a Norse waste vehicle causing an injury to a resident, and the claim is pursued against the contractor, but also co-joins RDC as a defendant. And I think the ideal best practice in that sense is that when going out to contract, RDC ideally should obtain an indemnity from a contractor. But indemnities are fragile and they don't often work. So you back that up by RDC being named as a co-insured on the contractor's policy. So my question really is, I would like to see a statement somewhere, either in this report or in the controls, as to what the practice is. And obviously I recognise that RDC has its own insurance for such liabilities, which would respond, but that would take time and expense and would be a claim against RDC's record, which actually would feed into higher premiums. So the ideal best practice is a preferred position. So are you able to comment at all on that?
Emily Yules. This might be something we might have to get back to.
Thank you.
But you see the point I'm making?
Yeah, absolutely. I can comment in quite generalised terms around contractual arrangements. So any contract that the council enters into will include provisions around insurance requirements and liability for claims. So I take your point that we should look to have a consistent approach to that across contracts, because it's probably dealt with on a contract by contract basis. And our strategy should probably more specifically state the council's position towards that when we're entering into contracts. So I'll take that away. I do understand the point that you were making, Councillor, about where does the liability sit, and there are some contractual relationships that the council has where an operator is working on our behalf, for example, where we retain the liability. So I think we'd have to take that away in terms of what would be the correct kind of wording to put into this sort of document. But to give you some reassurance, it is covered within each of those contracts with the suppliers. There will be clauses in there to cover insurance and liability.
Yeah, I would expect that. It's just that it would be nice if it was watertight to protect RDC in the best fashion. I do have some supplementary questions on this as well, which is that, there are 4 separate policies with 4 different insurers. Is there not an insurance underwriter out there that offers a package that covers all of these things, which presumably will be cheaper? And secondly, is there not a scheme run nationally for local authorities that provides these sorts of insurances so that RDC would benefit from a cheaper cost, presumably a cheaper cost, because of pooling their risk with other local authorities?
Thank you. I'll hand over to Emily.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm probably going to give you a slightly vague answer to that question, and it's probably best for me to take it away. With regards to the different providers of the different types of insurance, I can only assume that when they've been reviewed on an annual basis, that has been the most cost-effective way of dealing with the different types of insurance that the council needs to acquire.
I would be surprised.
But of course, we can look at having multiple types of insurance under one provider. It may be that they're sort of legacy issues where contracts have been renewed for insurance in different ways, but we can certainly look at that. As far as I'm aware, there isn't any kind of national scheme for.
There actually used to be many years ago, because I actually worked for a broker that acquired a broker that was the broker for the local authorities.
Okay.
Yeah, but that may well have just disappeared.
My understanding is that it's for each local authority to appoint their own insurers at this moment in time.
Okay. One final supplementary question on this is that, has the insurance arrangements ever been subject to an external independent audit?
Well, we are internal audit. We would do a review of insurance arrangements. As to an external review, I can't comment, but the internal audit function itself is subject to internal audit on a cyclical basis. So we would look at insurance. I can't say when the last audit of the insurance section was undertaken, but yeah, we do undertake reviews.
But that, Mike, pardon me, will be an audit of the processes. What I'm thinking of really is an audit to determine the adequacy of limits and coverage and stuff like that. It's done on a regular basis within industry, and I just wonder whether it's appropriate to do it for local authorities.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate. I mean, each local authority sets its own limits in terms of, and each local authority's probably got different limits in terms of public liability and indemnity. Yeah, I know that Rochford is different to Basland, so it's based on the risk attached to that local authority and the premiums paid. So each authority would be different, but whether the limits set by ROTRA are appropriate, yeah, that would be subject probably to an external provider who's got more in-depth knowledge of what's appropriate as opposed to myself.
I mean, I asked the question because I actually do this sort of work myself, but not in terms of local authorities, in terms of oil companies. And it's surprising what you come across in terms of restrictions on coverage and exclusions that have just gone unnoticed, that are really very important. So it doesn't actually cost a lot of money to do something like this, and it might just be worth thinking of.
Certainly, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. That's given us something to think about, I think. Thank you. Members, are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Mrs. Wilson.
Sorry, Chair, my question is related to what Councillor Sharp has just said. How will his suggestion get taken forward? Because actually, I think this is really important. Thank you.
Sorry, Emily, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll pick that up with the Director of Resources. I believe that the external auditors do require us to make a statement to confirm that our insurance levels are adequate, and they do kind of make sure that that's in place. But I think what we could potentially do with looking at here, Chair, is a sort of a external specialist doing a kind of review for us and making any recommendations of any shortfalls that we might have in place or provisions that are not catered for that ought to be. So I'll pick that up with Tim, and we can take that forward as a suggestion.
Right, thank you. Members, are there any other questions? Councillor Gadsden?
I've got a couple. I'm not sure if I've missed the boat and we've moved on, but it sort of moved quite quickly from the internal audit progress report. So on page 6.7, going back to that, risk 1, it says ongoing service review means this cannot be done until such time as one team approach has been agreed. So
Councillor Gadsden, we've already moved on from that
I know, but
item.
we sort of like jumped on. I wasn't sure whether we were going to cover some of this or not. So, yeah, no, okay, don't worry.
But you could
email you those
could
questions.
email and ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions before we consider noting the report? Is this report noted? Oh, we've got a recommendation. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have. Sorry, you're right there. That was right there. Yeah. Right. The recommendations are that the revised insurance and risk management strategy is agreed, and that the committee notes the report. So on that recommendation, do we have a proposer? Well, I can propose it from the chair, yes. And do we have a second? And Councillor Mr. Wilson is seconding the proposal. Members, please indicate if they are in favour. Any members against? Any abstentions? And the report is noted. Yeah. Thank you. Now, we have a bit of a problem with the final item, the audit planning report, in that representative of Ernst & Young is not here this evening. We knew that Debbie Hanson couldn't make it, and Tim Willis did make inquiries if she was sending someone in her place, and as they couldn't cover it, it's been suggested that we defer this to the next meeting. The reason is that, like most other audits in most other local authorities, they are actually behind. And Mike can give a bit of an update on that for you. Then they would be here to actually explain what the situation is and what they're actually doing, which is the problem.
What would I say in relation to this? This is basically setting out the work for the audit of the accounts in relation to 21-22. They've already started that work. So basically, it's retrospective. They're going back to basically say, this is what we're going to do, but they've already actually started that work and it's near completion. So this is basically something that should have come to committee, but it got overlooked. So they're now ticking that box in effect, bringing you the audit plan and setting out what they were proposing to do in relation to 21-22 accounts. But that work's already in progress. So in reality, they started it. It's just basically bringing to this committee, setting out what they were going to do.
Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My recommendation is we don't defer it because I can't see the value of this report. It's really just setting out what Ernst & Young are going to do and how they do it. And it's a very impressive looking document. It's probably a copper plate document, but it doesn't say anything other than that. So I think the most important document for us to review is actually their findings, which I think were due in November 22. So I think that's really the key document for us to consider, not this particular document. Having said that, I did notice, and I hadn't spotted this before, but according to Ernst & Young, as at the 30th of March 22, the pension scheme had a deficit of 21.2 million. I hadn't focused on that at all before. Not sure whether I'd ever seen that before. So I'd like to know if you have the figures, what that represents as a percentage of the shortfall as compared to a fully funded position, and whether that has changed, whether it's got worse. And if that is the situation accurately, is there a program in place for RDC to fund that gradually over time to restore a fully funded position?
Mike, can you shed some light on that?
It's not something I can answer, so I would have to defer that to Tim to answer that question, or in due course to the external auditor themselves.
That's why we thought it was best if the internal auditor was here at the next meeting. That was.
But that's a question really for RDC, not Ernst & Young. I mean,
I think it's a question that Tim, if we put it to Tim can answer that question. Yes.
Okay.
Outside of the meeting. Yeah.
We appreciate there will be difficulties with this tonight because of Tim not being here and the representative of Ernst & Young.
But I mean, that is a serious
but
figure.
We could get a written reply for that now, could we not, for you and for the councillors?
Well, I think it should go to everyone.
Yeah, that's what we should do.
Yeah.
That's what we really should do. Yes, yeah, I'm all for that. Thank you.
So, sorry, Chair.
Councillor Getson.
Yeah, there are other questions that might need answering. So then would that not be better not to defer it and bring it back so that other questions can be asked? Otherwise.
Well, the problem we had is our key people not here.
No, not tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I feel it should be deferred as suggested.
Gives us time
gives
to get
us all the
everything together,
opportunity
really, because it's quite a serious matter.
Yeah, there's an expenditure and revenue mix up on here, so it'd be quite interesting to be able to get some greater understanding if it was brought to another meeting for me.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Linden, you've got a question?
I was just rained upon.
Oh, the roof is leaking. Oh, that's fun, isn't it? Right, thank you. Okay, well, members, that's the situation with the audit planning report. I just realised that it's only in the last day or so we realised that we were rather hoping to get another representative here from Ernst & Young tonight, and that has not happened. So we can defer that, but we can also get a written reply and answers to those questions about the pension deficit particularly, and other issues. One other councillor did send a question in which is not on the agenda tonight, but we have agreed that she can have a written answer to that as well, which is Councillor Shaw. I'll email her tomorrow and just let her know she's going to get a response for her question. And that will be all ready. And if she wishes to comment, she may turn up at the next meeting. Thank you, members. Thank you. Members, I'd like a motion to defer this item until the next meeting, so a member of Ernst & Young can be in attendance. And I'll also add to that you'll have enough time to get a written reply about these issues as well for the next meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gadsden, thank you. Members, those in favour, please raise their hands. That's it. It's unanimous. Thank you. And that brings us really to the conclusion this evening, unless someone else has got another point. Thank you. At 8:10.